Thank you for joining today's webinar. We'll just give it another minute to make sure that we have as many people on as possible, and then we'll get started. Thank you. Good morning and welcome everyone to today's webinar, Part Our Photographic Evidence, Compliance and the Path to Data Digitization. I'm Maria Hudson, CMO at the Build Data Group, the company that owns the Zutec, CreateMaster and Bond Brand digital brands. I'll be your host and moderator for today. And I'd just like to apologise up front. I do have a bit of a cold, so hopefully I won't be too croaky during the session. So before we get into the crux of the session, I just wanted to go over a bit of housekeeping quickly. To ensure you have the best experience on the webinar today, you can enlarge your screen with the arrow in the right-hand corner of the presentation. This should give you a better viewing experience, especially when we do our live demo of the Part Our Photographic Evidence solution. If you have any questions throughout the session, please feel free to ask them as we go through everything, either on the chat board or the Q&A board, which you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. We want to keep the session as interactive as possible, so we will answer questions as we go through and at the end. We will also be running some polls during the session, so please do participate, as it's always good to get your views, especially on the digital process. You can see the polls when they go live in the poll link again at the bottom right-hand corner. And lastly, we will be recording the session today, so it will be available on demand after we've finished. So wanting to introduce our speakers for the day. So joining us is Emily Hobson-Hill, CEO and CTO of the Build Data Group, who will be sharing a little bit more on Part Our Photographic Evidence, our platform, and also be able to address some of the technical questions you may have. We're also joined by James Cameron, Head of Sales at the Build Data Group, who's been working and talking with the residential sector for many years, and can not only share today some of the things that he's been hearing and seeing from customers across the house builder space, but how we have evolved our approach as an organisation to meet our customers' requirements. Welcome both of you, and thank you for being part of the session, and give us a wave. So for those of you that don't know the Build Data Group or Zutec, I just wanted to cover off a little bit more about the organisation, and then I will share a bit more of the detail of the themes things we'll be covering today. So the Build Data Group is a collection of complementary companies that provide best-in-class software and solutions across the REBA stages of the building lifecycle, supporting customers really with their digital transformation. Together, our brands have a combined experience and expertise working across the built environments of about 20 years. So there's a lot of knowledgeable people within the organisation. Zutec is the leading SaaS platform brand that we have that provides a common data environment, supporting quality management, snagging and defects, project and tender management, and digital handover. And while our solutions across Zutec can be adopted in a modulated way, it can be also used as a single source of truth for data information and audits. CreateMaster is a UK leading digital handover organisation, and the team within CreateMaster bring together building manuals and documentation for contractors for handover to asset owners at the project completion stage of a project to ensure regulatory compliance. And last but not least, we have Bond Digital, which provides structured data and building information management and modelling solutions for our customers. As a group, we continue to develop and add more capabilities and value to our portfolio so that we can ensure that we can support your businesses throughout the building lifecycle with digitisation. So in terms of our approach as an organisation, we like to build relationships and partnerships with our customers who are really the focal point of the decisions we make related to delivering products, solutions, services and experience. We have customer success that sits at the heart of our business, and we're very much dedicated to making sure that we provide solutions that work for you. We have a number of customers across the house builder sector that you can see here, and we don't really like to spread ourselves too thinly, so we're very much focused on the residential sector in terms of house builders, developers, build to rent and housing associations to provide solutions around regulatory compliance and driving efficiencies. The companies that you can see in the space today that we work very closely with have been very much instrumental in helping us develop solutions that work alongside your working practices. And this is kind of evident in some of the proof points you see on this page in terms of the inspections we complete and will look to complete and the data points that we're managing across our built assets. So Emily and James will dive a bit more into the detail around our platform. But I just wanted to highlight here that we provide a standardized approach to information management processes, templates and workflows, have modularized and tailored solutions such as Part-L. Our platform is also fully configurable to meet business requirements of our customers, as well as customer success, which I mentioned earlier. We have an implementation team that works alongside you to ensure that we not only provide a platform that's configured to what you want and your needs, but also your users have the training and support and the resources to be able to easily use it, from stakeholders on site to those in head office. Our approach means that you don't need to change your process. We adapt our platform for you, and you can take a phased approach to roll out and ensure adoption is successful and that you have the support to take further steps towards your digitization program. Also, as a cloud-based platform, it can be accessed anywhere on any device and is fully functioning in the field, but also integrates with BIM and other applications, so you can be using it quickly and alongside other apps you may have in place today. So on that point, I'd quickly like to share what we'll be delving deeper into with James and Emily. So we'll have a poll first, but then I'll be handing over to Emily, who will talk you through Part-L photographic evidence, what needs to be considered, and show you a live demo and show the solution to support your strategy and process. We'll then have a couple of other polls scattered into the session, but then James will pick up and cover off what we've been hearing from you, standardization and best practice, and then discuss the Zutec approach, how our customers move from kind of using our tactical solutions all the way through to being strategic digital partners. So before we move on to that, we want to ask you the first question. And our first poll today is around your role in photographic evidence and Part-L, and how compliant are you? Are you compliant yet? So that poll should be live if you now move into the poll section. And there it's a multi-question approach, so just please answer where you see the answer that resonates with you. Can everybody see the poll? I can see the answers coming in now. So a lot of you look to saying that you don't have a strategy or not a Part-L photographic evidence, you're not Part-L photographic evidence compliant yet. So We'll leave that there. Please do answer. It's good for us to understand where your role is and what part you're playing in photographic evidence as we roll through the session. And we'll have further questions as we go through. I'd now like to hand over to Emily, who will talk a bit about Part L. Thank you, Emily.
No problem. Thanks very much, Maria. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank
Lovely.
you.
All right, so before I launch into a demo, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what Part L, what the changes to Part L really mean for photographic evidence. So as I'm sure most of you are aware, there's been a big focus on energy efficiency, reducing carbon emissions, and the enhanced Part L is part of making sure house builders are helping meet the target to have new houses have 31% less carbon emissions than they previously would have done under the previous regulations. So one of the key things that have been put in place that's a change is the need to take photographic evidence of your thermal continuity and the quality of your insulation at 6 potentially key points throughout your build of a house, with some of those points having more than one detail that needs to be photographed as well. With the idea being that you know, as the party responsible for building that house, take the photos, and then an external assessment, SAP assessor, occurs to sign that off from the building control point of view and say, yes, we're prepared to issue a report, a BREL report, confirming that this new build has got insulation and thermal continuity to the new standards required. So this need to take photos is really the new bit. And I'm just going to move on to the next slide, because what we've been focusing on is making it easy for your people on site to take those photos, your site managers, and submit that information without it being a large overhead on them, without it being complicated. The idea is to make this process as smooth and easy as possible so that it doesn't disrupt your site operations. So our platform handles all the actual specifics, so making sure that the photos are high enough resolution so that they can be audited by a third party, making sure geolocation is tagged so that, you know, we can prove the photo was taken at the plot that's under build, making sure the photo file names are useful and refer to the plot reference, and all the kind of stuff like that, so you don't have to worry about all of that side of it. So our role really in helping you meet this new regulation is to cover the georeferencing of the photographic evidence, to provide that centralized platform that has all of your Part L evidence and all the supporting documentation in one place. And this is useful obviously for audit purposes afterwards, but also to get a real-time idea of how you're progressing towards getting that approval towards a BREL report for a build. And I'm just going to focus on real time for a second there, because one of the key things that might have been lacking historically is the ability to send this out to a SAP assessor while you're still doing the build, while it's still in time to make changes should the SAP assessor reject it for any reason. And this is why really we think technology and a platform like ours is going to be crucial with this, because operating at the scale that most of you operate at and getting real-time information back in time to make changes, I think would be a very, very hard thing to do without a technology platform automating a lot of that for you. And that's where we come in. But the key thing being that it should be absolutely easy for your users and not complicate the process for you. And ideally reduce your defects going forward. So give you an extra benefit there, as well as accelerating your ability to hand over your plots. So in terms of the benefits, I think I've probably covered them off, but this is just a nice summary. So as well as being quick and simple to use and covering the more complex stuff like geolocation, it also is easy to share your processes and workflows between sites. You know, once you've done it once, it's very easy to just out of the box set it up again, get everyone onboarded without having to reinvent the wheel every time. And it also provides that, you know, should anything go wrong, that evidentiary path back to proving that, you know, the regulations were followed, the evidence was gathered, so that you can, you know, reduce risk for yourself going forward as well. The other key thing it's worth saying is that our platform and app is designed so that if you don't have Wi-Fi on site, that's okay. It can pull off GPS locations just from your normal phone's GPS system if it has network connectivity. You can then store down the information and decide not to sync it till later, so that you're not constrained by bandwidth on site as well. So there's a lot of flexibility with our platform and app to make sure, as I said, it's as easy as possible for your site users. So I am now going to jump into a demo, and we've taken the slightly bold move here of doing a live demo from my iPad. So I will now be a site manager and show you what they would experience. So I am just going to share my screen. Moment of truth, obviously. Obviously, we tested this massively, but we all know what happens when you try and do this live. So hopefully everyone can now see my iPad on the screen. You might need to go full screen if you can't quite see it big enough. James or Maria, could you just confirm you can see the iPad?
We can see the iPad, Emily. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right, so this is what your site manager would see. So they'd open up the app on their iPad, or it could be on a phone as well. And we've got full native support for iOS and Android devices, so it doesn't have to be an iPad. And they would log in. And it will be the same login details they'd use if they were logging into the cloud platform from a PC as well. And then they would come here to the construction photographic evidence list. Now, most of the time, they're probably going to want to take a new photo and add new evidence. If they wanted to see something they'd done previously, this will all be stored. You see that I've got a number of draft items here that I haven't yet submitted for review. But let's assume that I'm going to be taking a new photo here. So I would touch the evidence button to bring up a new form. And the first thing you'll see is it's auto-filled a number of the fields for me. It knows what organization I'm from, the date, who I am, my email address, and also it's logged down the longitude and latitude I'm currently at. Then I'm going to select the project. Let's say it's Adelphi Plaza. It's also then auto-filled out the project abbreviation and the project code so that your user doesn't have to. And all I have to do then is say what plot I'm on. Let's go for trusty old plot 14. Then I just need to say which of the Part L element types I'm referencing. So I'm going to say I'm taking a photo of external walls, and the particular detail I'm going to say is the ground floor to wall junction. So once I've filled that in, all I have to do is tap add photo and take a photo. And apologies, we'll take a lovely photo of my wall here. Obviously, this would actually be a photo of the detail. And then on that photo, you actually have an opportunity to circle key things or even to add a bit of text if you wanted. So I might just put a little note saying, I believe this proves compliance, etc. And then I can save that down. And that has now been added into my form. Now, the regulations only say that you need to take a photo of each detail. A lot of our customers like to take 2 photos for best practice and in case a slightly different angle is needed. I'm only going to submit 1 for now to give my fake QA assessor a reason to reject it. So I'm going to leave it at 1 for now. Then just down here, as the person who took the photo, we use what we call a digital pin signature. So as soon as I've signed once and set my pin, I can use my pin to pop in my signature securely there as well. And then if I know which SAP organization I want it to go to, I can select it here, or I can leave it blank and leave it for the QA team to fill out, or someone else internally as well. I'm going to just select one now so we can send that in. And then I hit save, and that will save that down as a draft. Now, maybe I'm taking several photos of different elements and I want to do them all before I sync. So I would do exactly the same process, hit evidence, put some new stuff in, take the photos, get it ready. When I'm ready to submit them, what I will do is I would grab them and I would set their status to ready for inspection. I can add a comment here if I need to. I can even add further photos. I shouldn't need to at this point if I've followed my process. And then I can just hit save. And then when I'm ready, I hit send in the top right here to just send that back to the master server. So that's now sending it to cloud. So I'm now going to jump to our cloud site. So that's pretty much the end of what the site manager has to do. They just use their mobile device, just take photos, fill out a few fields, the rest of them being auto-filled for them, and upload that information to the server. We then come to the cloud version, which is aggregating all the information you get from all your plots and all your sites. So here, what I'm seeing is the summary dashboard of the what we've done so far. So we've done 203 inspections. We've got a little map of where that's happening. Now, I was doing plot 14, so I'm going to filter down to just plot 14. As you can see, I use it for testing quite a lot. We've got a number there. And if we zoom in on the ones in London, then we will see all the ones that I've done here at my particular address. So I tend to take it in the study, but there's a couple in the kitchen. I took a few out in the gardens just to have some different locations as well. So this is showing me everything we've done on plot 14 so far, which SAP organizations we've been sending it to, the current status of each one. And then if I want to go into a bit more detail, let's say I'm now the QA team and I want to know which ones are ready for me to review on plot 14. I can just filter it by review status and go, right, here's all the ones that are ready for inspection. So let me just grab one of these, and I could jump through and go, right, I'm now the QA team. Am I happy with this? And actually, I'm not, and I'll tell you why. And that's because we've all agreed our internal practice is going to be to take 2 photos, and this person hasn't. So I'm going to set this to QA rejected and say, please take second photo as per agreed process, if I want to be particularly pedantic about it. Right, so I'm now setting that review. I could send an email deliberately, and so that person gets an immediate email saying this has been rejected, but I'm going to say no, because in this particular setup, I know we've set up a daily digest so that the relevant people get a daily digest of here's the photos that need retaking, and the QA team gets a daily digest of here's everything that's ready for inspection. So in this case, I wouldn't do that, but you could make it real time so people got information when the status changed about any of these photos in real time. If I had set that to QA accepted instead, then that again can trigger a notification to the SAP assessment organization it's been assigned to. And again, depending on how you're working with these organizations, we tend to send them a daily digest. They log in and do their reviews of everything that's ready for them. Or alternatively, you could work in a more real-time way, although most of them want to work in a kind of daily or even weekly digest way, we find. Now, the key thing to say is what I've just shown you is our best practice out-of-the-box process. So this, is adherent to the regulation, is in use with several of our customers, but because the platform is very configurable and flexible, we can also make changes. If you wanted a double-stage QA process rather than just accepted and rejected, maybe you want QA team and then head of quality or something like that, that's very easy for us to put in. If you had a slightly different structure of project code plot, that again is very easy for us to change. Now this, we found that this meets 90–95% of the needs we're seeing at the moment, but because the platform's configurable, it is very easy for us to tweak that should it be needed. Okay, I think that is the end of my demo for now. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen unless any questions have come in immediately.
There has actually been a question, Emily,
Okay.
and the question is there a requirement for a certain type of reporting format to be done for the SAP assessor to inspect, or can it be sent in any format?
That's a good question. So at the moment, none of the organizations have said, here is the format we need. They have just said what they need is essentially what's in the regulations. So we need a clear photo showing the detail. You need to tell us which plot it is, which detail it is, and the GPS location. So far, they haven't said, no, we need a report in this format. And the ones we've talked to have been happy to kind of log in and actually use the platform as a digital way of reviewing it. So yeah, good question. So far, no, we haven't talked to any of the assessment organizations who've actually specified a particular format.
Great, thank you, Emily.
Okay. Any other questions? No?
I think that was the only one for now. So we'll keep going. We now have another poll question. Would you consider an out-of-the-box software platform for Part L photographic evidence? So that poll should be live now. If you're happy to provide your answers, quite straightforward, yes, no, maybe, I don't know, and submit your votes. I can see a yeses and maybes coming in there. I'll give it another minute, and then we will move on to the next section. So it looks like most of you would consider an out-of-the-box platform. So I will hand over to James on that point, who can talk a little bit about what he's been hearing from some of our customers around Part L and digital transformation. Thank you, James.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. So just to put some context around the next, I guess, part of the session. So over the last 12 to 18 months, our primary focus as a business has really been in the house builder space. So we've spoken to, purely within that element of the market. We've spoken to over 50 house builders about Part L, about the kind of move towards capturing photographic evidence of the build stages more generally, and ultimately about digitization as a whole topic. So what we tried to do over the next 2 slides is really summarize the key themes and topics that have run through those discussions. And it's quite interesting at doing that, in that pretty much everyone we speak to is grappling with the same challenges, and it's interesting to see how this comes together both as a digital strategy, but also as particular pain points that I guess both ourselves as a partner into the industry, but also the industry as a whole have got to grapple with. So I think kind of working left to right through the boxes there. Universally, we're seeing a view that you can't deal with this Part L without some sort of software platform, and it's really an issue of scale. So for the customers that we're actively, we have live sites now, or we live plus test sites with. What we're seeing is up to 100 photos being generated per plot. Each one needs linking back to the plot. Each one needs to be timestamped, to be geolocated, to be approved. Each photo needs to be available for a purchaser to request it on request. So to do that at any kind of scale using a manual process is difficult to the point it's impractical to do so. So that's kind of the first conclusion or thematic we've arrived at through these conversations. I think coming back to the earlier question, I think from Nathan about what do the SAP assessors actually want? Well, we're seeing a pretty inconsistent view about what that looks like. Because yes, the regulations specify build stages and then locations to capture those photos. But in terms of how the assessors are going to consume those photos, how they're going to approve them, there doesn't seem to be a consensus view emerging at this stage. So where we've ended up in terms of our strategy to supporting the industry to do this is basically to create flexible options. So the preferred option is always the approvals done in the platform, because then it can automatically be time-stamped, automatically gives you an audit trail. It's all in one place, so it's easier to manage. But there are other options available as well. So taking a consolidated PDF report of photos per plot, or just the ability to extract the data into the platform to be sucked up into a kind of other processes, for example, required to produce the BREL report. So we're seeing a requirement for flexibility across the space. What we're also seeing, we're hearing, is that SAP assessors have offered to capture the photos themselves. Which actually sounds like a viable idea, given that ultimately they've got to approve and produce the reports based on the photos. But when we've explored this with a number of our customers in more detail, it tends to fall down at firstly at the logistically. So if you're at a key build stage with a particular unit and you need to capture the photo there and then, you've got you want some tool that's immediately available, or a resource that's immediately available that you might not get if a third-party organisation is doing the photos. And then the other point being one of data access. So if the photographic evidence is all stored by a third party, if you ever change that third party, or you need access to the photos kind of instantly because to deal with for example, a legal completion or a purchaser request, more of a challenge if they're hosted and stored elsewhere. So hence the kind of, whilst it sounds good in principle, we're seeing most of our house builder clients take ownership and control of their own photographic evidence for those reasons. Another thematic is using Part L as we said, a catalyst for thinking about digitization more widely. Because really it's just a form, a workflow, and a dashboard if you really simplify it down. And yes, those things need to be specific to meet the requirements. But if a digital tool is going to be introduced to meet that requirement, why not look at other things that fit that same profile? So other paper-based forms, manual-based forms, processes that go through information goes through a workflow. We're seeing lots of wider conversations spinning off the back of Part L about digitization in general. Another theme that we're seeing is I guess a disconnect between operations and IT, and whilst there are some exceptions with the customers that are thinking about this as a kind of consolidated project, which in our view it absolutely should be, in most instances this is either an operational led project or it's IT led, and often with a kind of disconnect in the middle for joining up those two pieces. So we're seeing a lot of technical teams, obviously with compliance within their remit, starting to think about it. Construction teams, obviously they're the resource at the coalface that's managing the build process and ultimately would be taking the photos. But but we're seeing often there's gaps in it as a consolidated, centralized, standardized solution that we think ultimately you're going to need to manage this at scale. And I guess the final point on purely looking at Part L, whilst the regulations came in June 2022, most, if not all, of the house builders we're speaking to did a large pre-registering exercise. So they've got units starting under Part L, kind of February and March through to June 23 seems to be the real theme. So kind of buying time to really get under the skin of the regulations and think about how to manage it. And we're seeing a lot of clients now starting to test and pilot solutions ahead of really needing it in earnest in that middle part of next year. So there are a number of the themes purely about Part L. If we could move to the next slide, please. And then there's some wider but related topics. So I think the first thing is yes, an application or a software platform is one element, but it's not the only element that we're seeing as important to make this work. So the next one is looking at devices. So are the devices that the site team have available fit for purpose? So are you able to look at a form on the phone or a tablet? Are you able to, have you got a device that's capable of capturing GPS coordinates? Most do. But I think thinking about the hardware strategy alongside the application is something that some have considered, some haven't. Ultimately, it's got to be fit for purpose. And I think there's a balance between a phone, obviously site manager, you'd expect to have that with them at all times. Whilst it's easier to do it on a tablet, it also comes with an overhead of them having to remember and to take the tablet out on site with them. So there's a kind of some thinking and planning needed around not just the software solution itself, but also managing the devices. We're also seeing across talking to a number of our customer conversations, the prevalence of shadow IT. So what do we mean by that? Sort of site managers downloading their own apps to capture photos that are not connected in any into any kind of centralized data structure. It's just an individual site manager thinking ahead about I can do a process better digitally than in a paper format, which is the right way to think about it in our view. But you really suffer from that not having that centralized coordination. It adds extra risks for things like data security, cyber, even GDPR. So some of those types of matters. But it also means it's much more difficult to track and truly give yourself comfort that you've managed these photos if they're just on an individual app or an individual device. And I guess kind of the bottom three boxes, they're all play to the same thematic, which is not just thinking about the software itself, but thinking about how that lands and how that's managed within the business. So thinking about that change management process that goes with replacing a paper process with a digital one, or introducing a new process, capturing Part L photos is extra work for the site managers. They haven't had to do it before. So thinking about how do you engage with the people that are going to be using it? So yes, they understand that this is compliance, you need to do it. So the stick approach, in other words, but also supporting it with some carrot, which is making it really easy for them using a simple solution, standardizing the data structure centrally, so they just have to pick drop downs rather than think about what data they need to do to enter themselves, making sure that there's training available and there's training resources that they can call upon, making sure they know where to go if they've got a problem. So it's that holistic view we're seeing has almost been a defining factor with, I guess, a successful rollout of a house builder digitization program versus a not successful one. And there are lots of customers that are open and honest about where those kind of IT implementation projects have failed in the past. A number of our clients now have talked about bad internal PR with digitization because it hasn't necessarily been figured in the round. So they're just some themes. Obviously, we talk a lot more about these topics, but what we've tried to do is distill kind of the individual factors that our customers have highlighted as either as needing managing, needing thinking about, needing planning to really make sure that this process lands and is used and is successful. And I guess this is all can be wrapped together in terms of standardization. So having a centrally managed platform or a centrally managed data strategy to that means essentially you capture this information in a standardized way, and that needs to cover all of these topics. I'm not going to go through them all one by one, but ultimately this is a compliance matter. Purely Part L. If you don't have these photos, in theory, you won't be able to get completion on a unit. So it's not just about being able to capture the photos, it's being able to track them in a standardized way, find them when you need to find them, have an audit trail of who signed them off, and ultimately be able to give them to purchasers on request. So it really lends itself to that kind of standardized strategy. And I guess as we talk in a moment about what we think we bring to the table, that's very much at the heart of how we see this being implemented successfully by the industry.
Thanks, James. We do have a question that's actually come in, so maybe we can answer that before we move to the next poll. And that is, when is the best time for Zutec to join the site team, or I guess be introduced to the site team? Do you have a view on that?
Yeah, I mean, so if you work backwards from the first point, you would need to capture a photo. So the first build stage is looking at the foundations. So before you need at the point at which the foundations start to go in for the first unit, that's the point you need to take the first photo. That's when you actually need it. So if we work backwards from there, most customers now, we're sort of 6 months in advance of that, they're starting to test and trial solutions. So we've had a number of clients engage with us over the last 6 months to start to build a solution that meets their processes, that suits their business, their resourcing, their structure. Test it, train people on it, make everyone aware about why it's important. Iterate, following on from that. So essentially, you're ready for when the first point in which it's needed. So yes, we can do it. Yes, we can do it quicker. And we talked about this being ultimately a solution that's designed to be ready to go and work outside of the box. But reflecting on it's not just the software. You need to think about hardware, and you need to think about change management and training. We would say, ideally, you work back 6 months from the point at which you need it.
Yeah. Just to add to that, if anyone has gone past that point and has been gathering stuff kind of manually, there's nothing to stop us doing a retrofit as long as you've gathered the photographic evidence already. So it's just worth saying that, James. I mean, ideally, yeah, we're planning well in advance, but just in case, there's nothing to stop us retrofitting data that exists onto the platform.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to use a real example, so another house builder we've just started working with, so they run something, 20, 25 sites concurrently. We've just got the system live into their business within 2 weeks from first engagement, based on a standardized template. So that was something that they wanted to start testing it. I think their first site under Part L, spades in the ground in mid-Feb. So they wanted to start testing it before Christmas. So they've got 6 weeks of kind of tweaking and implementation time before they actually need it when they come back after the Christmas break. So that was a kind of 2 week turnaround. So it's in that kind of window.
Thanks, James. We do have a second question that's come in around the cost of implementation of a system like Zutec. Maybe you could talk a bit about the POC model that we have. I think you also covered off, there's a second part to this question around kind of time frame to adoption. I think you've kind of addressed that just a second ago. But, to ensure achieving this in 2023, you've talked about the process, but yeah.
Yeah, so I'll be able to answer both of those. So I think in terms of the cost model, I mean, there's two things that are important to us, I guess, in terms of our pricing model. One is functionality. So you only pay for the bits of the system that you need. It's very much a modularized approach. And the other one is scale. So as in how big is the use case, how big's the business that's going to be using it. So typically we do unlimited users and unlimited data just because there's an overhead of monitoring and managing those if we start to put caps into them, hence our preference for an unlimited model in regards to those variables. So our preferred metric of scale is company turnover. So we look at, if a customer asks us for pricing, we ask them for the functionality that they wish to use and the turnover of their business, and that generates a monthly license fee. At the minute, as Maria mentioned, we're running a kind of proof of concept / pilot program where essentially, for $5,000, you can test our standard template out on a single site for 6 months. And the kind of logic behind us doing this is we basically just want more data around how this actually works in practice. Because we talked about a lot of pre-registration, and most house builders that we're speaking to, it's 2020. Whilst it was regulation from mid 22, it's 2023 when they're actually going to need a solution. So we want more. We want more data, and actually, our customers we test this from, and we get a sense of here's what works, here's what kind of needs more planning and thinking about, here's what's problematic in the process. We all learn. We get better at managing this requirement as a result. So hence we're doing a kind of pilot program, which we've been speaking to a number of existing and potential clients about. Time frame, I think we've spoken about. We can do it in as quick as 2 weeks. We would say probably start thinking about your strategy 6 months in advance as an ideal scenario. The vanilla answer, if anyone asks us how long take to implement Zutec, as it would say, allow 6 weeks from the point at which you actually need it. So it's in that kind of bracket. With all these things, it depends on how customized or tailored you would need it. So hopefully that gives you a sense of the answer to that question.
Great, thank you, James. We are now handing over to our next poll. So where are you on your path to digitization? That poll should be live, so please do use the multiple choice answers. One is at the start of your journey, so using some solutions but no strategy or roadmap. Planning, establishing tech roadmap and assessing potential options. Progressing, rollout is underway with adoption of solutions, advanced and integrated solutions across the organization, or I don't know.
And just while people are answering that poll, I think there was one more question for you, James.
Oh, let me take a look. Yeah, so the question is, so the company's already engaged and more trialing the system rather than meeting the new Part L in 2023.
Yeah, there's a real mixed bag. I mean, most it's really in the last 12 months that house builders have been actually contracting with us to help them with Part L. So some house builders are testing our standard solution. Some house builders we've worked with them to essentially build a specification and build a tailored process to do it. That are in that kind of trial phase, and there's I guess top 3 house builder that's already rolling our solution out on a phased basis across their business. There's a real mix. We're seeing most house builders are at it's their first site where they're actually needing it in practice is the stage where they're at. I mean, I think it's early for everybody. I think we're comfortable that we've spoken to enough of a cross section of the industry to have a good sense of how this is going to be managed. Same with anything that's new. We're expecting to iterate it over time. As we get more data points around what actually works. I think the benefits of having a flexible platform as we do is it's easy to make changes as and when kind of new information comes to light, or we get more of a sense of what where potential pain points are with customers.
Great, thank you, James. I think I'm handing back over to you now anyway, so if you want to continue the story, thank you.
Yeah, so we're now going to look at what kind of Zutec is as a platform, and then just a bit more about us as a business and how we approach this. So I think purely from a technology point of view, key point being we've got one integrated system. So the cloud application is at the heart of it. So that's essentially the centralized data set accessed via the cloud. Most customers use our insights or analytics module as the kind of window into it. Because it's much easier to look at a dashboard to see what's going on than it is to interrogate a data structure underneath, unless you're a kind of super user or a IT technical user. Data typically comes into the platform from the Field app. So Emily's demo on the iPad, we were looking at the Field app. So you don't need internet connectivity to capture photos, to fill in digital forms, to capture data, and they just sync back into the cloud once you're back in range of Wi-Fi. And then there's also an integrated BIM app, so you can start to look at some of the linking back some of these processes to the models. We tend to see that more on apartment type projects, just given the nature of the more complex nature of construction, but it's there for customers that are putting BIM at the heart of their journey. So that's the technology side. I guess final thing to say is we have an open platform, so we've got open APIs, so we can push and pull data either in a kind of simple configurable way, or for some customers that want more bespoke integrations, we're open to doing that. But the key thing is one integrated platform. Now, if you move to the right, the building blocks of the platform, essentially everything's built on 4 primary components: workflows, forms, checklists, and registers. So I think most of these are pretty self-explanatory. We can recreate any essentially format of form. So lots of customers give us paper-based forms, or simple kind of Microsoft Office type forms, and we'll recreate them as a digital data structure in the platform that retains the look and feel. Checklists are just simpler versions. They're normally multiple choice, so a series of questions with yes, no, maybe answers. Workflow is again pretty self-explanatory, just a sequence of steps, gateways, action points that flow in a configurable way, and then a register is the kind of the heart of that. But it's the simplest ways to consider that. It's basically a digital version of an Excel spreadsheet. So any process involving any of those building blocks could be built within Zutec. Now, we don't think most of our customers want to start with a blank bit of paper and figure out what they want. So us as a business, reflecting our 20 years experience in the industry, we've used those building blocks to create standard templates to solve particular problems. So you've seen our Part L template. We've also got templates for snagging, QA inspections, health and safety, essentially document management, golden thread, kind of lots of topics for outside of the scope of the webinar today. But so for most customers, they start with our standard template and then configure it from there to meet their specific needs. So that gives you an idea, just a high-level overview of what Zutec as a piece of technology does. And then this zooms out a bit and shows you how our group structure works together. So obviously, the primary focus today is Zutec. We talked about those building blocks being put together, to provide solutions to specific problems, where you can look at those as the kind of themes in the middle row. So, we'll be talking to you about Part L or Reg 40 today, which sits as part of our quality management module. It can be used more widely to do quality inspections. Essentially anything that where a form's filled out on site or a checklist is filled out on site, let's say as part of a weekly QA check or your final unit sign off, very straightforward to digitizing the platform. Can be used for snagging. Can be used as a kind of common data environment. So this is another kind of key focus for us. But both last 12 months and probably looking forward to the next 24 is having that golden thread of information, to be able to track kind of any information through from sort of planning and pre-planning through to detailed design, through to construction, through to kind of the inspection process and into handover as one single consolidated. Data threads is a real key focus. More to come from us on that in due course. And then we've got 2 services business that help us both understand the industry and also get data into the platform. So, as Maria talked about up front, CreateMaster does digital handover. So that kind of digital O&M, building manual, asset register piece, so providing management services around that. And then Bon Brian, very much experts in more structured data. So looking at some of the open standards that come out of the BIM requirements. So things like IFC and COBE. They help clients both write their strategies for dealing with that, but also then ultimately deliver against those standards. And all of this works on a modular basis, so clients can pick and choose the elements of that kind of set of solutions that meet their needs. We would normally advocate with customers, start with 1 or 2 things, really get those right, build them in the platform so they meet your needs, and then add more things to it over time. Avoids the whole kind of end-to-end, having to think about it as a whole end-to-end, all-encompassing business transformation projects, which often become too big in our experience. Hence, modular solution, manage it through bit by bit. And then final thing before, I know there's a couple of questions that we'll just come back to. So our objective is ultimately to be strategic partners for customers in the residential space. And we look at essentially the industry not being ready or not wanting just a platform. So whilst we have a platform and it's built around flexibility, which we think is a key strength, it's actually the meeting of platform, service, and knowledge coming together that we look at as our USP. So what do we mean by that? So from a services point of view, we'll set the system up for you. We'll spend a lot of time with you, so you know how to use it. Both use it on the coal face and managing it for you. We'll help you create training materials. We will proactively track data, the usage data in the platform, and play that back to you. To the point where some of our largest strategic customers, we're helping them with internal comms. So we're writing internal comms collateral through our kind of account-based marketing function. So all those things kind of come together to make really to help our customers accelerate the ROI from from the platform. And it's all underpinned by our knowledge of the sector. So we're entirely focused on the UK residential sector. It's what we know. It's where all of our customers are. It's where we're focused on. So we help you with not just general support around digitization as in construction, but really focusing in on the sectors and subsectors of residential that we know very well. House building, build to rent, housing associations been the most common ones. So that's who we are. That's what we hope to be, and that's kind of key to our strategy as we take our business forward. And then this just drops down into another level of detail. Essentially shows how the individual solutions come together through the different life cycle stages of the building. It's probably a good time to come to some of the questions, I guess.
Yeah, so there has been a few questions coming in while you've been speaking, James. I think you talked a little bit about this, but for all forms and configurations, will this need to be completed by Zutec, or do you train internal super users or trainers so that they can do it going forward?
Yeah, really good question. I think that the best answer is it depends, but to be a bit more specific than that, so we would certainly do the initial config. So in terms of getting the initial system set up, so both in terms of digitizing the initial forms, registers, dashboards, etc. So that initial kind of typically 6-week window of getting set up the key priority processes, we would do all of that. We test it with you, train you on it, etc. In the longer run, we want you to be able to self-manage the platform, and we're a SaaS business. We want you to be able to manage it yourselves. So we would typically advocate between 1 and 3 super users for an enterprise account that we spend a ton of time with, and over time they can manage it themselves, whether that be creating a new form, creating a new process. That said, most of our certainly new customers, we'd support the relationship through enhanced technical account management. So that means you get a dedicated person in our business that is there to support your super user on a regular basis, whether that be creating new processes, tweaking existing, kind of doing more follow-up training. So it's a combination of us doing the setup. Ultimately, we want to get you to the point where you're self-managed, and there's normally for a kind of tail of enhanced service, certainly over year 1, where we would support your super users to do that. So hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you, James. Another question that's come in: will sign-off of the part-out images be outsourced, or is this done in-house? I don't know who wants to take this.
Yes, I mean it's the SAP assessors that have got to sign off the photos. So we're just providing the tool to 1, capture the data, photos on site. 2, automatically add the data that needs to be there to comply with the regulations, and then 3, provide that kind of audit trail of who signed it off and when, so you've got access to it. But it's the SAP assessors that need to sign the photos off. Come back into one of the earlier questions: are the SAP assessors clear about how they want to do that? We don't think they've settled on a standard approach at this point, so we've got flexible options. They can either approve the photos in the platform, which will be our preferred recommendation, or they can export the photos as a PDF per unit to then sign off, or they can take the photos out of the platform and into their own reports, depending on their preference. So the SAP assessors need to sign the photos off. We just provide the tool and some flexible options to help them do that.
Great, thank you, James. I'm just going to run the last poll, and then we can do the last couple of questions that have come through. And if there's any more questions in the meantime, those that are on, please do submit them and we can address them at the end. So the final poll is, what are the challenges you face on the path to digitisation? That should be live now. Again, multiple choice across lack of cohesive digital strategy, low on-site adoption of digital tools, siloed decision-making, insufficient budget for technological change, shortage of technology understanding, resourcing, and increased security risk. So if you pick those that apply to you, I'll leave that running. And then I can ask you those few final questions that are in.
There's two questions we haven't covered yet in the chat.
Yeah.
Marie.
Yeah. So what is your service on BIM, BIM manager or BIM coordinator?
So I'll take that one. So essentially, well, there's two primary areas. So first of all, our Bond business, their focus really is on the information management side of BIM, which, looking at holistically as a group, or build data group. Obviously, data is where our primary focus is. So they provide two primary services. So one is writing information requirements, helping you define what's actually required, both as a business or on a project, and then distilling that down into specific, detailed, clear briefs to the individual kind of supply chain partners. And then the second piece to that is actually managing the delivery of it. So it's typically IFC into COBE. So anything that aligns with open standards, helping you define what the strategy for what's required, and then ultimately managing the delivery of that. That's their focus from a BIM point of view. In terms of the Zutec business, we've essentially got the ability in the platform to link any digital process back to the model. So that's often digital O&Ms linked to the model, so you can use the model as like a digital index to find things, or linking quality management processes back to the model. So you can look at the model and, for example, overlay a RAG report of quality inspection, so you can see where you are through that QA process, using the 3D model as the base for that. So it's not really kind of BIM management in terms of geometry coordination. We're much more focused on information and data.
Thank you, James. And then the next question, from a USP perspective, which module would you say Zutec's main focus is, or best product? Obviously, some systems excel in one part or another. So whether it's CD, snag, or handover, where do you think we're?
We've got, forms and workflows is sort of the heart of most engagements we have with customers. So, because both of them can be, really are built to be configurable. So anything that involves a form and a workflow, I would say we're very strong in. If you look at some of the more technical projects we've done, historically, some of the big infrastructure projects that we were involved with before, kind of, before our time focused on the resi space, really highly configurable, workflows all linked to forms. So that's where I would say we're particularly strong. But looking at that kind of digital handover piece as well is also an area we've got lots of knowledge. We've done digital handover on 4,500 buildings across our history, and a combination of that, Create Master understand the kind of unstructured data element, Brian's knowledge of structured data, COBE, and having a platform to pull all that together. So it comes together in a user-friendly way. I think they're probably the two areas we're strong. I would say we're strongest in based on our current customer engagements. Emily, anything you would add to that?
I think you're exactly right. I think, to say it a slightly different way, we always design Zutec to be a platform. And the key thing with the platform is it has functions that can be repurposed for a variety of use cases. So rather than it being a USP of the platform, which can, because it's so configurable, it can do almost anything, it's almost that the USPs are where we decided to focus our attention, essentially. And James is exactly right. Where we're seeing a lot of traction and a lot of, really... our customers getting a lot of really good leverage from the platform is digital handover. And then what I would call quality, which is another way of really saying forms and workflows, I guess, James, but it kind of encompasses some of the things you said. So I see snagging the Part L stuff, and in fact site inspections, safety audits, or anything like that falls under quality. That's really our sweet spot because of the integrated nature as well of our apps and the master platform, and the ease of aggregating reporting across the whole portfolio. So, yeah.
Thank you, Emily. I know we're at the top of the hour, actually, so we have addressed a number of your questions. Unless there's any others that are coming in, I think actually there's one more. Is that right?
Yeah, final question, which says, we often work with CreateMaster. Is CreateMaster part of Zutec? So essentially, we're sister companies. So we all sit as one part of one group structure, Build Data Group, and CreateMaster and Zutec are sister companies. So CreateMaster is a services business, Zutec's a software business. CreateMaster just happens to deliver their service into the Zutec platform. So essentially, we're separate businesses, but with a kind of with a symbiotic relationship, because CreateMaster deliver the service into Zutec.
Thanks, James.
So hopefully that makes sense. I'll probably follow up individually on that question with a bit more detail.
Great, thank you. So we are at the top of the hour, as I said. Thank you to everyone that's joined today and participated in the session. Thank you to James and Emily for going through everything and being part of the session as well. I will close off, but if you do have any questions or if you require any further information, feel free to reach out to us anytime. There is an email address there, contact@zutec.com. We can direct your question to the right person to answer. So thank you, everybody.